I could welcome Tony Woods up, just while Tony's coming up. I'm going to take executive action. I can hear lots of tummies rumbling. I can hear aching knees, sore bottoms. And so I'm going to suggest, if it's okay with you, if you protest wildly, come and argue with me afterwards, that we move the film to the beginning of the afternoon session so we can all break for lunch soon. The one comment I wanted to make just before Tony describes what you could do with your lunch hour if you want to, is just to comment on the issue that Kathy raised about this, the sense that there's lots of information here coming from the PCA population, which is helpful for people who already have a dementia diagnosis, but what about those people who don't yet have any diagnosis? And I think we have to flag up specific recommendations where we see them and amplify them and share them. So this is just one example of an article written by a neuro-ophthalmologist called Gordon Plant, one of the leading ophthalmologists in the country, and he made this he describes the situation that you capture and then makes some very specific recommendations for all eye care workers, irrespective of your background. He writes, despite the progress in the understanding of the neural basis of PCA in recent years, patients still frequently experience a painful delay in diagnosis, mainly because it's not appreciated that their symptoms are associated with brain dysfunction by optometrists and ophthalmologists who are consulted. The need of increasing awareness among clinicians cannot be overestimated, and this should involve not only neurologists, but general practitioners, optometrists, and ophthalmologists, and I think many other professionals in the room. For all who see patients, no diagnostic, no professional labels, for all who see patients with visual symptoms, we would emphasize the following 2 points. First, in the patient history, take note of visual symptoms that have an emphasis on spatial disorientation. That can separate things from many of the other conditions we've been talking about, so the emphasis on spatial disorientation. Second, in the basic clinical assessment, such features as unexplained difficulty with Ishihara plates, including the screening plate, variable homonymous deficits on perimetry, and a tendency to omit letters on the acuity chart should raise suspicion of this disorder. So those are the kind of really practical implications, talking about everyday tests that are in lots of clinics, not just neurologists, that can try and get this spotted sooner and make it flagged up to people. So this is the kind of thing we need to share with our colleagues, get out, retweet, all those sorts of things to make sure it gets to as many people as possible. My blab over. This is Dr. Tony Woods, who is the Hub Partnership Manager, our fantastic host of the Created Out of Mind project over in Wellcome Collection. He's just going to say a few words about Wellcome, who are wonderfully hosting today, and tell you about a few things you might want to do during your lunch hour or after the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Seb. Thanks very much for the invitation. I do realise I stand between you and lunch, so we'll be very brief. In fact, people are tucking in already, so anyway. Okay, so as Seb said, my name's Tony Woods. I've spent about 15 years of my career in this rather unique organisation. So I'll just give you a little bit of context to where you are and also what we do and why. So the Wellcome Trust is a charitable foundation that exists to improve the health for everyone by letting great ideas thrive. So that's our kind of mission statement. What that means in reality is last year, for instance, for example, we spent £1.2 billion on research. That's billion, not million. So that is the amount of money, if you like, that we give away each year. So you can see we're a major world player in the charitable world. And probably number 2 or 3 in the world, so there's only Bill Gates with more money. So obviously that has a huge impact on society, and I'll come to that in a second. What do we do with that money? Well, we fund a lot of research, obviously, into various diseases and long-term conditions, such as dementia and mental health. But we also underpin a lot of the basic science that fund a lot of the basic science that underpins all that research into diseases. So we've done a lot of work on neurons, a lot of work on genes, a lot of work on microbes. And you might think, well, what on earth can you spend £1.2 billion on? Well, you would be surprised because we still have to turn an awful lot of things down. Some of the big ticket items at the moment are antimicrobial resistance. So we're looking for new antibiotics, vaccine research throughout the world for things like malaria, HIV, that kind of thing. We fund an awful lot of research in overseas units. So we have units in Africa and Southeast Asia. And one of the big things at the moment is planetary health. So we as a species are ruining our planet. The population is increasing by 1 billion people every 11 to 12 years. and the number of people who are living in cities is going up, and by 2050 about 2/3 of the world's population will live in cities. So what we're really interested in is how is that going to affect our health, and not only our physical health, but our mental health. So we're putting a lot of work into understanding urbanisation, understanding the impacts of climate change on our health, and understanding really just how we're going to feed all these people. So how can we feed the world and make it sustainable, which we're not doing at the moment. So those are the big items about for Wellcome Trust at the moment. So this is Wellcome Trust here. Next door is Wellcome Collection, which is a free museum and library that aims to challenge the way that we all feel about medicine and health. What it isn't is not a mouthpiece for the Wellcome Trust. Although it's funded by Wellcome, it's kind of independent of thought. And so it puts on programs, exhibitions, live programming, collections, broadcast, and publishing. And it's really to get to encourage people to be curious about the connections between science, medicine, life and art. So if anything you do get chance, say in lunchtime or at the end of the day, to nip next door, there's a lovely cafe, but there's two exhibitions on at the moment, somewhere in between, that really does explore these connections. And there's one on teeth. If anybody's got an interest in teeth, there's a very nice dental exhibition on at the moment. And then there's some permanent galleries around the life of Henry Wellcome, who is our obviously founder and benefactor. So that's what goes on next door. But the most important thing next door is the hub space, because I would say that kind of bias. And you would have heard from Seb this morning and also from Emma about the wonderful work that goes on there on research around the dementias. I think it's the most important thing that we do because we hear people's voices. We get the lived experience of people with dementia. We understand more about their conditions through interpreting through art, music, dance, poetry, that kind of thing, and we get the voice of the carers as well. And I generally think that if we ever get a breakthrough in dementia and a cure, it's not just going to come from people looking at neurons through a microscope or putting people in scanners. It's really going to be through talking to people, understanding how they live with these conditions. So I'll leave you with that thought. I will be around at lunchtime, so please come and chat to me if you want to learn more about the Wellcome Trust or Wellcome Collection. And as I say, if you get a chance to get next door, then please do nip next door. Thank you very much.